So we are now at the end of week 1 of Nanowrimo, and so far it's been going well. My aim for this month is not to do the 50,000. It never has been. I've also never done that. I am aiming for 20,000 words this year. Not even writing, just like words towards planning and structuring and outlining the story idea I have. So that is 666 words a day, which has so far been very achievable, and I have been achieving it, and I'm feeling quite smug. I've been doing like 700 or 800 words every day. And yeah, so far it's going well. My writing like routine so far has been mostly on my lunch breaks. So after I have lunch, I go for a walk around the surrounding area, kicking up all the leaves, feeling very autumnal, looking at the fancy houses, and listening to a lot of the Rings of Power soundtrack, because it's giving me like fantasy story vibes, which is very useful because I'm planning a fantasy story. And then after I've done my walk, I'll get back and I'll spend the last 5 to 10 minutes of my lunch break like frantically typing away on my phone and trying to write down all the ideas I've had. And so far, just doing that has consistently given me like 300, 400 words just from lunchtime daydreams. And then after work, I'll get in, I'll copy and paste that into my Word document on my laptop, and then add some more so I can hit the 666 word count. And it's been working just fine. My current overall word count is 3,872 words. That's after 5 days because I haven't written anything yet today. And yeah, I don't have much to report on other than the fact that it seems to be going well. I'm hitting my daily targets. I've made a very nice spreadsheet for myself where I can compare how much I've written this year compared to all of last year and like all the previous times. I think this is my 8th year doing Nanowrimo. So yeah, I've got all the graphs and charts that I could possibly need. And yeah, I'm having a good time. So it is now the end of week 2 and things are still going pretty well. I just hit 10,000 words today, which is very exciting. And I've been consistently averaging more than 666 words a day. My actual average overall so far this month is 772 words a day. I've also had just a few days where I have written more than 1,000 words, which is very exciting. I did have one day this week on Thursday when I only wrote 185 words because that was the day of the tube strike, which did kind of mess up my day a bit. I had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to get a bus across London to get to work on time, and then getting home in the evening was even less fun. It took hours and hours. It wasted a lot of my evening. I had to get different buses back through London. Right at the beginning of my journey, got hit in the face by someone's very full, heavy backpack. So that did not start things off very well. So I was just like, you know what? I've written a few words. I've been doing really well. I just let myself have that as like an off day, and it was fine. This week I haven't been so good at writing on my lunch breaks. I have most days left it until the evening before I've done any writing, which has been less good because I'm just tired and less motivated in the evenings, but it means at least that when I'm writing on my laptop, I can type a lot quicker. So I tend to write more than if I was just typing on my phone at lunch. So it has worked out overall. In terms of what I've been writing, I've actually had quite a good time, written some good stuff. I've had a few breakthroughs. I'll tell you briefly. I had one breakthrough about like the villain's evil, nefarious plans and how exactly they work and what they're hoping to achieve. That was based on a conversation I had with my dad about Halley's Comet. So that was very exciting. I also had a bit of a breakthrough about the end of the story because I'd never really given it much thought, apart from a few exceptions, about how each character would end up and like what the end of their story would be and what would happen to them in the end. But I did have some ideas for that, and they were kind of like bittersweet, which is usually my favorite kind of ending. So I'm pretty pleased with those ideas. But I feel like I'm about to catch up with the point where I'll have written down all my ideas, or all the ideas I've already had. And so when I get to that point, I'm then going to have to think of new material and new ideas every single day, which is a bit terrifying. But I'm very, very pleased with how things have been going so far this year. And I'm actually quite impressed with myself that I've managed to stay with this story idea. And like, I actually haven't branched off and written down ideas for different projects or like veered off into different things. I've stuck with my main story, which is very exciting. So week 3 of Nanowrimo check-in, my word count as of right this second is 14,227 words, but I haven't done any writing today, so I'm really hoping I can hit 15,000 by the official end of week 3. My average word count 20 days in is 748 words per day, so definitely ahead of the 666 I'm like personally aiming for, so I'm feeling very good about that. I did give myself like one day off, like a low word count day again, this time because I went to see Florence and the Machine at the O2 with a friend, which was absolutely amazing, like fantastic, life-changing experience. And I think in Florence's honor, I am probably gonna have to have at least one character dance himself to death in my book. Like, I don't make the rules, I just obey them, and she has inspired me to do that. However, what I predicted last week would happen has indeed come to pass, and I am out of ideas. I feel like every tiny plot point, every character, every twist and turn that I had at any point imagined for the story before I started writing, I have now got down on the page. I'm completely drained, my brain is empty, I feel like I don't have anything more to give, and I did actually allow myself to go back and look at like old story outlines and old plot ideas and character descriptions that I'd done for this story like years ago, because this project has been ruminating in the back of my mind for like years and years and years. And originally I told myself I wasn't going to go and look at those. I was technically going to obey Nanowrimo by starting with a blank page and just adding everything I knew. And I wasn't allowed to go back and look at stuff I'd already written and incorporate it in. And then I ran out of ideas. So I did allow myself to do that. And I mean, to be honest, I had remembered 99% of all the previous ideas I'd had, but I did get like a couple extra 100 words from using that method. So Nanowrimo is definitely getting harder as it goes, to no one's surprise, really. However, I will say that I'm really actually proud of myself for sticking with this story for so long. Previous years, I'd always start Nanowrimo with a specific story idea in mind and be like, this is the year I write this story. I mean, the story I'm currently working on, I tried to do it for like the 2019 and 2020 Nanowrimos, I think. And then I'd inevitably get like 5, max 6 days into the month, and my brain would be like, I don't want to do that anymore. Let's do something else. And then I would just end up writing whatever I wanted to. And it was always fun, and it was always a really great time. And then I'd always just count everything I wrote towards my Nanowrimo word count. Like I put it all in one Word document and just splurge wherever I wanted to, whether it was relevant to my original story or not. Sometimes I'd come back to my original story like a bit later in the month for like one day and then abandon it again. But I'd just write wherever I wanted to. And it was a really fun creative experience. And then all of that word count would count towards Nanowrimo. So I'm really proud actually that I'm 20 days into the month. I'm 2/3 of the way through Nanowrimo, and I've stuck with the same story. And sure, I've definitely been daydreaming about other stuff and thinking about other stories, but I've stayed true to this specific project, which I am very proud of. I mean, there's still time for me to abandon it. I got 2/3 of the way through. That's still better than I've done any other year. I could spend the next 10 days just writing whatever I wanted to and complete different projects and making up as I go, and I'd still have a great time. That's the joy of Nanowrimo. No matter what you do, it's a good time. So I won't try and predict how the next week and a bit will go. I mean, fingers crossed, I'll stay with the story. I think the fact that I have stuck it out for 20 days in a row means that I can stick it out for 30 days total. Like I am actually quietly confident in that. But then again, I could wake up tomorrow and be like, nah, I'm done. I want to write some Rings of Power fan fiction, and I might.
because I have actually still been listening to a lot of the soundtrack of Rings of Power as inspiration for my story. It's just a great time. I'm going to give a specific shout out to the songs Elrond Halfelven and then the short, funky one, Scherzo for a Violin and Sword. Those two songs, great. I really don't have much of a NaNoWriMo playlist this year. I really just have been listening to that album. I mean, I've been listening to a little bit of Midnights by Taylor Swift, but I don't like that album. It's got like 4 good songs on. Gutting. But I mean, as I've decided after the album came out, I'd listen to a mediocre Taylor Swift album if it only had 1 good song on. So like, I'm still happy, I still love her. I don't really like her recent albums, but I'm getting off topic. I don't really have a NaNoWriMo playlist. It's a bit Rings of Power, it's a bit Taylor Swift, it's a bit like just typing in mermaids into Spotify and just seeing what comes up. And actually, I have been listening to a lot of Florence and the Machine, mostly in preparation for the concert. But now it's reminded me how much I love every single one of her albums. She played Never Let Me Go as part of the encore. And she said, like, this is a song that we haven't performed in over 10 years. And I was like, oh, I feel special that you would play this on the night that I'm there. I mean, maybe she's been playing it as an encore for the whole tour. I don't know. I'm going to pretend that she just played it for us on the O2 on Friday. That's fine. But I should go back and listen to her second album, Ceremonials, that song's from, because that's a great album. I particularly love Strangeness and Charm. And actually, now that I say it out loud, that song could serve as some very pertinent inspiration for my story. So maybe I'll just spend all of this week going for walks at lunchtime, listening to Florence and the Machine on full blast, and just being very inspired and sticking with the same story for another 10 days. Here's hoping. So my total words are now 18,863, which is pretty good. Very, very close to my goal of 20,000. And I thought what could be cool would be to go through everything I've written and pull out like the 1,000th word and the 2,000th word, etc. to just see if that could give like a little sample size of my story and see if it brings out any cool words. So those 18 words are as follows. Region, can, long, specifically, determined, and to, she, intention, between, sailing, night, she, again, a lot of female characters in the story, ill, as, eventually, get, her. So none of those words are actually very specific or detailed or give you any idea what my story's about. In terms of like a writing playlist or music I've been listening to a lot recently to inspire me, there hasn't really been anything in particular, but I would like to once again give a mention to Florence and the Machine, because I was listening, well, okay, I've been listening to them quite a lot, but they have a song called My Love, and there's a phrase in there which says the worrying sky, and I was like, actually that phrase, the worrying sky, would make a really good title for one of the books in this series I'm planning, so there could be something there. This past week did start very promisingly with my writing. So on Monday, I reached my word count before I got home in the evening, which is incredible. And on Tuesday, I reached my word count on my commute into work in the morning. Like by the time I got off the tube at work, I had written 700 words. And then things immediately started going downhill, and like by the end of this week, I was back to writing everything in the evening in a mad, frantic rush to get my words out before I had to go to bed. So I'm very much reaching the end of my motivation for NaNoWriMo, but that's fine because we're actually also nearing the end of NaNoWriMo. I think I'm actually in quite a good place in my story overall. I've stopped focusing so much on like the nitty-gritty details and specific character descriptions and, you know, the tiny little plot points and ideas, mainly because I've run out of that kind of idea. But what I have tried to do is take a step back and look at the overarching plots and structure of the story and to see what's there and what's working and what isn't working and what's missing, so that I can then get my ideas of what I need to write from that and going in like filling in the big chunks of the puzzle rather than focusing on the little tiny stuff, because I'm completely burnt out on tiny details. I can't do it anymore. So for my penultimate thoughts on NaNoWriMo 2022, I would say that it has been good. Even though a few days ago I did come very, very close to not abandoning this story, but to like writing about another idea I had in order to make my word count for that day, but I didn't. I stayed strong, and I'm very impressed with myself that I managed to stick with this one story idea for the whole month, actually. And I'm realizing that I do really like this story and the characters and these ideas, but I am also very excited for November to be over. So November is over, we are a few days into December, and I'm going to give my final thoughts. But first, my word count, my official word count for NaNoWriMo 2022 is 20,141 words. Even though that's not as high as some of the other years I've done this, I feel almost more proud this year than any other time, just because this is the first and only time I have ever stuck with a story idea for the entire 30 days and not once abandoned it or got distracted or changed my mind or changed things up. Like, I've been so single-minded for 30 days straight, my brain has been fried. All of that writing was at the expense of most of my sanity, and also the fact that I did absolutely no reading in November. Like, not a single book was read by me. Mostly because I just couldn't engage with any other world. Like, I couldn't handle having more than one story and world and set of characters in my head apart from the story I was working on. But to trade 1 month of not reading for getting so much of my story done, I think it was worth it. I also wanted to complete the sort of made up tradition I now do apparently of looking at the 1,000th word every time I reach a new 1,000. So for my 19th 1,000 word, it was garden. And for my 20,000th word, the word that pushed me across the finish line, it was and. So to finish off, here is a bar graph showing how many words I wrote per day throughout the month. Definitely started to sink towards the end, mostly because I already knew at that point that I was going to reach my goal, and I was feeling incredibly burnt out and didn't want to force myself to write more words a day than I absolutely needed to. So it turns out that for me, slacking off or starting to slack off at last towards the end of the month was kind of the perfect thing to do. And here is a line graph showing my sort of overall word count progress throughout November. And because I love graphs, here's just a few more stats for you. Here is how this year's word count compared to my 7 previous years of doing NaNoWriMo. And here is how my writing progress throughout the month compares to previous years. And finally, here's some information on how my word count per day compares to previous years. My most words written per day this year was 1,036, which isn't that high compared to other years. 2020, day 1 of NaNoWriMo, I wrote 7,000 words in one day. Who knows what was going on? So now I am completely exhausted and also very grateful I don't have to write 666 words for another 11 months. But I am also just a little bit already looking forward to next year.